Sometimes life asks us a question that we can't ignore. Today's guest has an even greater question. If not now, when? Our guest is the author of 5 books, storyteller, cancer advocate, and musician. He's been diagnosed with multiple myeloma in 2019, and his perspective on time, relationships, and purpose has changed forever, and I believe it's going to change the view of our audience today. Let's welcome Ray Hartjen with us. Ray, good to have you in the house, man.
Hey, Mr. You, thank you, man. I've been looking forward to our conversation. So,
same here, man.
Thank you so much.
Same here. Let's do it, man. Let's get into it. All right. So, before your diagnosis, Ray, you had a successful career built around sales, communication. I'm pretty sure big marketing, Fortune 500 type of deal. After hearing those words, you have multiple myeloma. What changed first in that scenario? The priorities you have regarding work, your perspective on life, all across the board, or do you have a renewed purpose or a question about your purpose in life?
Yeah, that's a great question. And when I was first diagnosed, for those of you out in the audience that aren't familiar with multiple myeloma, you're not special. I didn't know about multiple myeloma until I was diagnosed. Yeah. Right? It's a blood cancer. Unfortunately, it's an incurable blood cancer, but it is treatable. Right. And so, the changes that happened to me, Mr. U, was, they were incremental. At first I was like, all right, I had gone through a long diagnosis process. It started off with being anemic. Just a routine blood test showed I had some, slightly low red blood cell count. And so trying to confirm that, we confirmed it, went on and on, finally got to a bone marrow biopsy, which wasn't a lot of fun, not to be considered recreational or as a hobby. Finally got diagnosed, and it felt as though I'd been on a long journey. And as the type of person I am, I'm like, good. Finally, we know what it is. Now, I've been taking all these punches. Now I can get in the ring and I can start fighting back. I can start punching back. Yeah. And I was going to be in an induction therapy for 3 to 6 months, then probably go through a stem cell transplant. That's what my doctor told me. And I'm like, cool, man. 3 to 6 months. I'm an overachiever. I'm going to do it in 3 months. I'm going to be the best cancer patient ever, man. I'm going to step up my workouts, going to get great physical condition. I'm going to refine my diet even further than it is. I'm going to be ready to go. And so that's what I set out to do. That's the first thing I did. And about 10 days later, it was a Friday night. My wife, Lori, and I were out with our son, Raymond, at dinner. And I was exhausted, man. I couldn't even read the menu. I was just worn out. And that was 10 days into my fight into cancer. And, it dawned on me right there. I probably knew it intellectually, and maybe I'd even talked about it. But, I realized then, hard and fast, that my whole being was more than my physical self. That, I had the mental component, the emotional component, the spiritual component, and I had neglected those. I was so focused on my physical self that the other ones kind of atrophied, and they weighed me down, and they actually dragged me down. Wow. And so I whether it was that night or maybe a day or two later, Mr. U, I came to that realization. It was like, wow, I just learned something about myself. What else can I learn about myself as I fight cancer, right? And so I immediately kind of fell back to this exercise that I did. I facilitated for years in my corporate America professional life. It's a timeline exercise, and I wanted to share it with you and your audience right now. It's really simple. If you have a pencil and a piece of paper, that's great. If you don't, it's so simple. You can use it. You just do it in your head. And this timeline exercise is just draw a line left to right, horizontal line. At the far left-hand side, you make a little tick mark. Far right-hand side, you make a tick mark. Under the left-hand side, you put the letter B. That represents your birth. The right-hand side, I know everyone out there is one step ahead of me. You put D. That's your death. And that's the timeline that you have on this planet. So the introspective part is you just take a moment. And I know we know intellectually that, tomorrow's not promised. But where do you think you are on your timeline? Where do you believe you are in your heart? For years, Mr. U, I would just haphazardly throw my tick mark. I wouldn't even think about it. Just throw it in the middle. I was going to live forever. And if not forever, I was going to live for at least be 100, at the time of my diagnosis, I was 54. I was 19 days away from turning 55. And so I looked at my timeline and said, man, if I'm being intellectually honest with myself, I'm a lot further to the right than the middle, So I, put my little tick mark over to the right, and I just looked at that and I said, what does that mean to me? And what it meant to me almost immediately was that I recognized that for far too often I'd taken time for granted, much like a lot of other people, I imagine, right? So I said, okay, if you take time for granted, how does that manifest itself? What does that mean? You take time for granted. And by looking at that, because I took time for granted, I took people and relationships for granted. And right away, I recognized I wanted to change that, right? I want to focus on what's most important to me and who's most important to me, right? And so, from that moment on, I began a kind of, a journey of, self-discovery, of learning, but also pivoting and refocusing. And, instead of telling stories for other people, there are stories I wanted to tell for myself. And that led to writing books, writing more music and the like, and living with gratitude with the people that mean the most important to me. So, to your question, it's been kind of long-winded. It took little steps and little bits of discovery and learning, and that led me to more learning and more learning. And I hope I continue to learn every day.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I got a good buddy of mine. He's been a part of, he's been on all of the shows that I had going at the time. He had the same diagnosis, and his attitude is very similar to yours, man. He is just rolling. He's still getting on podcasts. He's still sharing his message. He's writing books like you are. He's not a musician at all, but he had a loving family and a big family, and he's living it out, man. So I applaud you, man, for the perspective, man, on people have something that's kind of like in your ballpark or deal with something that's kind of like what you're dealing with. They tend to look without rather than look within.
Yeah, so and I appreciate you. I appreciate you saying that, and I appreciate you sharing that. When I wrote a book about my experience because other people helped me. As a patient, I found a support group of cancer patients, and they kind of taught me, at the time I needed to be taught how to be a cancer patient. That it's just a new beginning, that there's still life to be lived, right? And I wanted, they became heroes of mine. They were role models. It's like, man, I want to be that type of person. The people that follow me, I want to be able to help them, pull them forward to where they want to be or where they need to be. And if how can I do that? I did it through a cancer patient memoir. It's called Me, Myself, and My Multiple Myeloma. And through that book, I'm able to, I've had just this honor of meeting people like your friend. I haven't met him yet, but I'm hoping to meet him, and hearing their stories, right? One thing I like to tell cancer patients, actually anybody facing any health issue, is that you are stronger than you know. You will be able to rise to the occasion, rise to the challenge. So you're stronger than you know, but also know that that together, your community is even stronger still. And I notice that you just put up in the studio chat that your friend's name is Bill Derrick. I know Bill Derrick. In fact, I got his book. So I got his book.
That's so
right
good.
Here. Oh, Restored by the Storm.
Yep. I'm glad you guys know each other already. That's so awesome, man.
What a small world. Man. A small world, huh?
These good people, man.
Yeah.
Definitely, man. I love your motto I love the motto because it's not so much that it goes on a t-shirt. It definitely does. It's definitely t-shirt worthy. Punch today in the face. I love it because it sounds to me, I only heard a little bit so far. I know we don't have a lot of time together, but what I heard so far gives me the impression that on a daily basis, you're doing something to make that motto more than just a motto. Mm-hmm. What are you doing that if you can share it with our listeners and viewers today? What are you doing on a daily basis? Because I know the ups and downs they're real. And sometimes it's a lot harder some days than it is on other days. What are you doing every day that makes your motto of punching today in the face a success when the day is over?
Yeah, it's funny. You talked about belongs on a t-shirt. That's how I came up with being a musician. Being a musician, always looking to make a little extra money with gigs, and there's no better way of doing that than having a t-shirt. Have a t-shirt, put the band logo on the front, put some kind of pithy saying in the back, right? And looking at that timeline exercise, the first motto that came up was "If not now, when." I looked at that timeline. I'm taking time for granted. If not now, when? And that motto helped me write the first book. The first book is called Immaculate: How the Steelers Saved Pittsburgh. A friend of mine, my co-author Tom Olenek, he had talked about this book for decades. He's the Yinzer. He's the guy from Pittsburgh. I'm not from Pittsburgh, but he's from Pittsburgh. But he's a biotech guy. He's not a writer, and I'm a writer. And finally, after decades of hearing about him talk about what his great idea this book might be, I grabbed him by the shoulder and I repeated my motto: if not now, when? Let's get started on it, and let's do the book. And 18 months later, we had a book, and that was the first book, and that's cool. And then, over time, looking for another motto, it was the idea of punching today in the face. It's, today, Mr. U is a gift. And we know that not everybody received the gift of today, right? So what can we do to honor them? What can we do to honor the day? And what can we do to honor ourselves, right? Let's make the most of the day. And, I want to, if I want to grab today's attention and just use it all up. Right. And, if you've ever been punched in the face, that kind of grabs your attention pretty quickly. Right. So that's the basis of the motto is, I want to be able to, at the end of the day, as I'm kind of like rolling over and going to sleep, I want to know that, I fulfilled today's potential and I got the most of it, and I want to kind of look over at tomorrow and say, man, I'm coming for you next. Right. So, the idea of punching day in the face is just using up the day. Making the day know you were there. Let's not have, you and I are talking on a Thursday. Let's not just have Thursday be like Wednesday, but it was just a different day, right? What can we do? What can we do to advance toward the purpose that we have, to the goals that we have, the objectives we want to achieve, the relationships we want to foster and build. Let's work toward that instead of just let it slip away and wait until tomorrow.
I love it, man. We got time for a few more questions before we close the broadcast out. I'm going to come back to the Pittsburgh Steelers conversation because that's kind of how we started our connection together.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a huge football fan. I think you mentioned that you were too, I think. You talked about how the Pittsburgh Steelers saved your life. I'm like, okay, I'm definitely intrigued. Mm-hmm. Now, can you share that briefly, how the Steelers saved your life? Because I'm sure that if they knew that, they would be like, wow, we need to get this guy season tickets and have him in every game. And
it's maybe not, maybe not so much as, like saved my life as, helped me redirect my life. Right. With the, if not now, when, and Tom wanting to write this book, Tom, the thesis of Tom's book is that, when Pittsburgh was needed to go through this very painful deindustrialization transformation from the steel industry to like the new economy, right? Difficult times, but they could lean on this football team that up until 1972 had been mediocre at best, right? 39 years of their existence, they've been a pretty poor football team. So it was a surprise, and then, you see this football team in the 70s that wins 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. And they're kind of built in the image of the city, blue collar, bring your lunch pail to work, take a shower after work, not before work type of guys, they found strength and resilience in their football team. And I found strength and resilience in, beginning this book. I was diagnosed in 2019. I'm beginning to change my life around to focus on, a new purpose for me, new priorities, focus on relationships. Tom's a dear friend of mine. If not now, when? It's the middle of the pandemic in 2020. It's like, let's start this book. And, it reinforced my purpose. And not being the Yinzer, not being the guy from Pittsburgh, I had to do a ton of research on this to help write this book. And I learned so much. I had so much fun publishing the book. We published it in December of 2022, the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception game. And the Immaculate Reception game is, kind of it's a big theme. The book starts with it and it's kind of woven through the first half of the book. It's a book I'm super proud of, Mr. U. It's the best-selling book that I've been involved with of the 6 books that I've published. And, I'm super proud of it. And so, the Steelers, the city of Pittsburgh, and taking that journey. Man, let's say they saved my life. It certainly gave, new purpose, new direction, and been very rewarding, just going through everything that's involved with that book, from writing the book to getting it published to participating in things like, the Humanities Festival in Pittsburgh and the like. It's just been really cool.
Congratulations on the success, brother, for sure. All
Thank
right,
you.
next to last question, man. I get people who come on our show. We've been doing this for 6 years almost. Well, yeah, I think we're almost in year 6 now, next month. And we've been doing this for a long time. I've got people who come on the show who've had hard things happen, and they talk about, not taking time and life and relationships for granted. What are you personally doing? I mean, as personal as you can get with this, what are you doing personally, Ray, to make sure that you're not taking relationships and life and time for granted? Because people seem to forget, maybe 6 months down the line, things improve. They forget all about those things because I guess the bitter pill of what they're going through is kind of subsided a little bit. It's not as intense. So they forget that. What are you doing personally to make sure that you don't take life and time and relationships for granted?
Yeah, I was talking to a guy about a year ago, and he said, "Man, I had a cancer scare, and I was like, it freaking me out, and like, oh, I got to do all this stuff." And then the scare went away. I was like, that's awesome. You don't have cancer. Celebrate that, but don't forget about all those things that you were going to change when you thought you did have cancer, right? Don't wait until you have cancer to change things. As it relates very specifically to engaging with the people that mean most important to me, I try to make it a point when I think of you to connect with you. When you're taking time for granted and you're taking people and relationships for granted, it's like, man, Mr. U's my friend in South Carolina, but I'll catch up with him tomorrow, maybe next week. Soon I'll get together with him, right? And forget all that, man. We want to punch today in the face. If not now, when? I'm going to reach out now. I'm thinking about Mr. U. Mr. U, what's up? And we have the technology now that makes it so easy. Back 150 years ago, it meant writing down a letter with a pen that you dipped in ink or whatever, and it could take some time. But now it's as quick as picking up your phone, pushing the little microphone button, and saying, "Hey, Mr. U, just checking in on you. How's things going? I'm thinking back about this time. It takes just seconds." And so, I encourage people out there listening. When you think about people that are important to you, let them know that they're important to you. Share the gratitude that, they're in your life. And those are the important things. It's not the car you drive or whatever. Then it's it's the people you connect with and the people that mean most to you, right?
Definitely. I believe the greatest tragedy isn't running out of time. It's assuming you have more of it than you actually do. So I really think about that kind of stuff. But here's how we normally end our show here on the flagship. I ask what I call a mirror check question. So you can direct this towards our audience, people who are listening live or that will be on replay. If somebody listening, Ray, has been postponing the conversation or maybe the dream, the first steps of that business, maybe pick up the phone or walking down the road or driving to a location to have that opportunity to give the apology or whatever the next chapter is that they've been putting off. Maybe they think they have more time later to do that. What's the one question they need to ask themselves when they look in the mirror today? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I'd ask them, what are you waiting for? What are you afraid of? When are you getting started? A lot of times, particularly when I talk to like new writers and people, it's like, I've got a story I want to tell. It's like, don't worry about the end, because when you think about the end, it gets to be kind of daunting, right? It's like, man, I got to come up with 75,000 words or something like that. Don't worry about the 75,000th word. Worry about the first word, man. Get started. Get started today. What are you waiting for? What are you afraid of? When are you going to get started? There's no better time to get started. There's an old Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. So get started right now. Let's do it. And if I can help you do it, let me know how I can help. I'd be happy to help anyone.
Right, I got your website up on the screen, RayHartjen.com. If you guys really want some help in this regard and you think Ray has some insights that he can share, his website's up on the screen. If you're listening to us and not watching us, of course, it'll be found in the show notes and in the comments section for this show. RayHartjen.com.
All my social media accounts too are my name, Ray Hartjen. So if you want to send me a DM or something like that, particularly if you're a cancer patient or a caregiver or an ally, and there's anything I can do for you, please reach out to me. And my email address is my name @gmail.com. So RayHartjen.com, RayHartjen@gmail.com, and any social media platform, just Ray Hartjen. Man, I'd love to hear your story. Reach out.
Thank you so much for jumping in here, Ray, and sharing your story. Powerful story, and you're definitely a powerhouse yourself, man. So thanks for being here and being a part of this.
I appreciate the opportunity, man. You're a powerhouse as well. I love what you're doing with the show, and it's been a pleasure being on. Thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. If this episode resonates with you, share it with somebody who needs a reminder that tomorrow is not guaranteed, and today is just too valuable to waste. Reach out to Ray Hartjen at rayhartjen.com, or you can subscribe to They Call Me Mr. You, or both, on our YouTube channel, or wherever you listen to your podcast from. Let us know you enjoy the show, and don't forget, the difference between who you are and who you could be is found in what you do every single day. Don't lose your edge. That's Ray Hartjen. I'm Mr. You. Have a great day. Thanks again for watching and listening.